and founder of SPC Business Consulting LLC, where we do all things government contracts.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vivica Brooks, and I'm the founder and president of the Brooks Group LLC, also known as TBG Trains, where we prepare individuals for their wow. And wow to us is the world of work.
So you can hear our episodes at SoundCloud at Adventures in Contracting or on our website at spcconsulting.org. You can follow us, send us messages, and comment on the shows or send topic requests to our Twitter at contracting_in, our Facebook at Adventures in Contracting, or LinkedIn at Adventures in Contracting. So today's episode is kind of a follow on of what we did last week. So last week we talked about pricing and we talked about um, everything that would entail and all of the little kind of bits and bobs that you put in with that. So today I thought it would be a good idea if we talked about, before you get to pricing, determining your value as a vendor and where you are at. So, Vivica, this is kind of your expertise, especially with you being in the hospitality industry. You understand uh, those tiers of service better than I do and what that entails. So, how would you describe for a government contract determining, determining their value and determining their client or their market according to that value?
So I think that, like when we were talking about last week and I had used the example of how Marriott has all different types of brands and it fits all different segments of where you are in life. So, I always like to talk about, and my friends and I, when we were in college and maybe we had to, pool our funds together and stay at a courtyard, or, or downplay suites or
Right.
something like that, and then you work and then you move up and then maybe now you're staying at Marriott hotels and suites. And then now you're just, big balling and you're staying at the Ritz or, St. Regis. And so they're following you every area of your life, right? And so it's still the same customer, but they're just
Right.
providing a different product and or service as you go through, because at the end of the day, it's still four walls and a bed, right? But it's about, ooh, do I
Right.
want the four walls and a bed with butler service, room service, these fancy amenities, shampoos? Or is it that I'm okay with, or is it that my budget allows for four walls, clean bed, and a foundational level of service? So I think that's a piece that people really have to think about and evaluate. Across the board, though, I think you have to, as an organization, determine the level of service you all are willing to give, right? And so I know for our
Mhm.
organization, I have just put forth to everyone that our philosophy is we are going to deliver impactful, engaging, relevant trainings, period. And so like that's the level of service that we're going to that we're going to deliver, right? Now when we think about our customer, and it's funny that we're talking about this because I was thinking about this past week, because we are, with the pandemic, it has definitely had us to kind of shift and evolve and pivot, whatever other word we want to say. And
Right.
with that, we started off with a laser focus on underserved communities, those who receive, TANF, marginalized communities. And that's still our focus. However, we see that there's a need to expand beyond that. And so, as we're thinking
Mhm.
about that expansion and starting to evaluate who else can be our customer while still giving that level, still delivering that same level of service. So, I think the two things that people have to think
Right.
about is, one, they've got to get a playbook for their organization. What are we going to do and how are we going to deliver it, right? Because some people are just like, hey,
Okay.
just get it done. Some people are like, no, we're not only going to get it done, but we're going to wow our customer, right? And that's how we
Right.
are. We're going to get it
Right. Oh
done,
yeah.
but we're going to wow our customer. And so now we're, as we're branching and expanding, and now we're saying, okay, we're going to now deliver our trainings to, the general public. They're still going to get that same fabulous, engaging, impactful training, it's now that there's another segment that's going to be able to experience it. And then with that, I think this is where the kind of amenities piece comes in, right? So if you are
Okay.
just getting the training piece, so there's that training piece, but now say you've done the training and you want to have some coaching and follow up that goes along with it, then that's where we're going into, okay, so I
Okay.
got the training, I had my four walls in a bed, I had a great night's sleep. Goodbye. Okay. But now it's like, okay, I've had my training, I had a great night's sleep. It was wonderful. But now I want to, purchase the robe that I had when I was in the room. So there's that continuation and that level of service, right? My examples are always very storytelling vivid.
Okay. I'm sorry. It just that was okay.
But you got it, right? So you can totally see it. Because it's like training. Okay, I'm done. Check out. Training. That was such a great training. I want to, replicate it or have it at home or see it again. Okay, what is it that we have for that?
Right. Okay, so here's the follow-on question. And I just want to say, I don't know what kind of pulling you guys were doing at Howard, but when I was in college in Texas, a Courtyard Marriott was a nice hotel for me. So clearly we weren't doing it big like you guys are doing it at Howard. If Howard was kind of where you broke college students were staying. We were trying to get to the Courtyard.
H
But
U.
anyway, clearly I was in the wrong place.
But I think it's a good example because like everybody can see that, right? Like everybody can kind of
Right.
like these places, and then that at its nuts and bolts, it's just a place to stay. But it's really about,
Right.
is it that I'm looking for a place to stay, or is it that I'm looking for this whole experience? And this experience is going to have these add ons, and these add ons are going to cost me this much.
Right,
Apartments can be the
right.
same
And
way,
I
I
but
think.
see that I think no, you're right. And that's the so I think that's a great place to start because a lot of contractors, right, well, let's back up, right? We say entrepreneurs generally become entrepreneurs out, either out of necessity or because they have one thing that they can do technically really, really well, and they're not being utilized effectively, under as an employee. So they say, I can do it better myself, and
Mhm.
they strike out on their own. And the issue with that is they may technically be like a Ritz, right? But when it comes to providing services, maybe they're a hojo. They just don't like. They're like, listen, I did what I did. It's wonderful, but I don't want to talk to you. I just did what I did. Now leave me alone. I'm gonna go out
But
and
I
network.
think that's right. But and see, and that's why I think it's important for people to be very clear. Many moons ago, we talked about being clear and intentional.
Right.
And I think you have to be very clear and intentional about because everybody is saying like I want to own my own business and I'm like okay, but then it's like why, right? And why is
Right.
it? So the why is going to help you solve that problem, but then how you do it is your uniqueness. And so like if you're just going to say oh I just want to do the bare minimum, which is, I mean, if that's your thing, that's fine. That's your philosophy. That's your
Hmm.
company's thing. So be intentional.
Right.
Let people who work with you know about that, and then go from there. So I think that's part of it because that
Hmm.
I think helps to inform the pricing conversation. Because when you're having that negotiation pricing
Right.
conversation, hey, you guys are coming in higher. Yes, we understand we're coming in higher. However, this is the level of service that you're going to get. It's not like off the shelf training, it's
Right.
customized. Then you're going to get this. Then there's the follow up service, and then you've got a signature follow up, a designated person that's going to work with you throughout the life of your project. So I think those are the things that are going to enhance it. Because is it, am I taking the bags to the room myself, or do I just want to, have someone take the bags and check in and show me to my room and show me the minute? Those are the different things. And that's how you can really determine your customer. Because there are people who will pay to have somebody take their bags, show them the room, open doors, cook. There's people for
It's
that.
me.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
It's me.
Exactly, as it should be, right? And so I think that's that piece too about private chefs. That's a total example. Everybody's got to eat, but okay, you cooking
Right.
your own food or somebody going to the store and cooking it for you.
Right.
I think
So
that's when
I
you can
think
think
so. I
about who's
love
your
this example
customer.
because it's really right. And I love this example because I think it's representative of so many things, right? Because we talk a lot about the choices that you make as a business owner. And this is another choice. What type of experience are you going to provide your customer? So this is how you
Mhm.
divide or devise your value. And it's so interesting because I had a potential client contact me based on the pricing podcast that we did last time. And one of the questions that I asked was,
Oh, cool.
how are you determining your rate? And the response was, well, right now I'm working a W-2, which is fine because a lot of people that run businesses work W-2s as a way to, as alternative
Absolutely.
capital, right? So that's fine. But he said,
No,
I'm
I
thinking
think
about
that's
doing,
smart.
yeah, it is. He said, I'm thinking about going into this market, but I want to offer a discounted rate. And I said, well, you know what? Here was my take on it. I know as small minority businesses, we generally sometimes have to work W-2s because we don't have access to the funding that other populations do. But I did say this. I said,
Mhm.
listen, you know, you have to determine what your rate is, and no one can determine that. Not even me. I can't determine that for you. I can tell you the factors that go into it, but your rate is going to be based on those factors plus whatever whatever it is that you've decided that brings you value, whether that's your experience, whether it's your commitment, whether it's the type of service you provide. Only you can do that, and only you can qualify that. But if you're working and you're going to go
Mhm.
into something and you're already counting, reducing your rate, then what you have is not a business, you have a hobby. Because when you reduce your rate, you are setting yourself up to have to work at that W-2 forever, right? The whole purpose of that W-2 is to provide funding for your business so eventually you can go there full time, right? And so if you're discounting rates and
Right.
you're cutting deals and you think that you're wheeling and dealing, you're not. You're actually stunting the growth of your company, right? You're taking it offline. And like remember what you said about being intentional. If you are intentional about growing your business and
Mhm.
making it a permanent
Mhm.
job for you, you can't start off saying, "Oh, this service is not worth the regular rate that it is." I mean, I know that there are exceptions,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes you'll take a loss leader to get your foot in the door, but that should be an exception, not a rule. Just because you're new to something
Right.
should not negate your value. If you know what you know, right? Whether or not this is your first day in business or your 100th day in business, right? You should know what you know.
Mhm.
On day one, you should be able to stand up in front of a room of 100 people and say, listen, here are the technical facts about what I know. And this is why I know it. That should not change because this is your first day in business. When somebody asks me about a contract, I mean, I can just geek out, right? Let's talk about this contract. We'll talk about this clause and this clause. I just go to
You and
like
your
contract no town.
FARs.
Right. I go to town, right? And it's been that way since I started, and it's only gotten, worse the longer you do it. But my point is that if this is what you do, then do it. You know,
Right.
don't let all
Yeah.
of these outside factors say, "Oh, well, okay, no, let me take a couple bucks off here, a couple of bucks off there," because when you go work for somebody else, you don't let them take a couple of bucks off of your hourly rate, right? When you're when you're waiting for that paycheck, you expect to be paid what you agreed, and
Right.
that should not
Exactly.
change.
Mhm.
So this is really interesting because as I was talking to the gentleman and trying to help him get to a path to where he could start thinking about the things that he would need to know in order to create a fully loaded rate, um,
Mhm.
It centered a lot about what he's providing, right? And the conversation centered a lot on whether or not he could charge that. And my question to him was, why can't you? Why don't you want to charge this
Yeah,
hourly
I
rate?
think that yeah. Well, and I think, and that's something that we all struggle with. Well, I'll say me, we struggle with, right? Because I think a lot of times you're going, it's you're sitting and saying, "Oh, wow, like I don't want to overprice myself or outprice myself from this."
Mhm.
And then I also think too, when it's kind of like it's your own, that's when you're thinking, it's just me and my examples, right? It's like when people say, "Oh, you make these great cookies, you should sell them." And people are like, "Really? I could sell these?" I'm just making them for my kids' school, blah blah blah. So it's like when
Right.
I do think that sometimes we can have that imposter syndrome, and we've got to push through that,
Hmm.
because I like what you said when you said, "Hey, you can go through, I mean, you know what you know, so step out on the stage and sing the
Right.
song," right? And so I think a lot of it too with
Right.
entrepreneurs, with being intentional, but it's also being intentional but hyping yourself up too, kind of thing. And I think one of the things that people can do is, if you do kind of put it out there, it's like you're throw the spaghetti against the wall example and see what sticks. Because say you do
Yeah.
go out at that price, but don't just go to one person with that price, because one person could say, "Hey, I don't like your cookies." And you're like, "Hey, but everybody told me these would sell," right? So I say, give those to like 10 different people. And now if all 10 are like, "Woo, these cookies suck," right? Then you were lied to. But it's like,
Mhm.
if it's like you get like 4 or 5 people who are like, "You know what? I would totally buy these." Then it's like, okay. And then that helps you determine your
Right.
customer. Look at us. Shut up. See? I think
Right.
that's that
And
piece. Mhm. Mhm. You're
but see
welcome,
that
sir.
you just said
There you
something
go.
so important.
That helps determine your customer,
You,
because you're sitting and saying like, "Hey, well, A, B, and C didn't buy it, but XYZ did. There's my customer,
yeah.
XYZ. Now, how do I find more
Right.
XYZs?"
You said something so important, which was kind of where we landed on in the conversation. My response was, maybe that's not your customer, which is, I think, the hardest
Mhm.
thing to hear as an entrepreneur, because we're taught that everyone is everybody could be a customer, right? Like there's this whole sales and marketing thing that treat everybody like they could be your customer. So we get very focused on volume
Mm.
instead of quality, right? So if we're talking about determining your market and determining the worth of our services, then what we need to look at
Okay.
is the quality of the client as well, right? Because do you want a bunch of,
Yeah.
I don't know, $2,000 clients, or do you want one whale who's like 20 million? What are you looking for? Because those $2,000 clients are very different than that whale. What is your hustle going to
Yeah.
take you to? And I think that's important to know. So
Yeah.
you touched on it really good. Who are your customers? Like, what do you want? And how do you determine that? And is it okay to say you are not my
Yeah.
customer?
Well, and I think I think it's about too, when you were saying, you should absolutely treat everybody like a customer, because like where I am today may not be where I'm going to be later on, right? So, but I think
Right.
in that whole regard of treating everyone like your customer, it's still like you still have to look at it from the standpoint of we're raised by the golden rule: treat everybody the way you want to be treated, right? But that doesn't mean I'm gonna like let
Right.
everybody in my house. You know what I'm saying? Like I can still be cordial and nice and treat
Right.
you respectfully, but it doesn't mean you're gonna get in my inner circle. So I think you can think of it that
Right.
same way. So I think we shouldn't take it like literally, like, "Oh, don't turn down business and treat everybody as your customer," because no, you're a nice person, but I'm not gonna have you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know how you meet people and it's like, "Hey, this is a nice person, but do I want them as a friend? Do I want them in my inner circle?" So I'm still being respectful. I'm still treating them
Right.
as a customer, as a person, as a human being. being respectful. So and I think that's okay. I think that that's something, I think that's okay. I do.
Yeah. So, as a small business, when we're determining our tiers of service, what what should we what kind of internal inventory should we be doing?
Well, okay. So the only thing I'm going to give you a little bit of pushback on when we talk about the tiers of service, right? Just because I think sometimes people equate
Mhm.
like, oh, well, if I don't pay, I'm going to get bad service. And I don't want, that's definitely
Mhm.
not what it is, right? So that's why I was saying I want people to, you've got to figure out what's your baseline of service, um,
Okay.
making sure every customer has what they need 60 seconds or less. Okay, that's going to be like your baseline of service, right? So, but when we
Okay.
talk about, it's not necessarily service. You could say I don't want to use the word well, I guess you could say like amenities, right? Because
Okay. Yeah.
the tiers of amenities, I think, would be what we could say, because that way people are able to then, one, get a full picture of everything that your organization, your product, your service, whatever it is that you guys are offering. And so I like to think of it as like a menu. Do you just want manicure, pedicure, and, reflexology? Like, I think you can give people choices and then allow them to kind of go through and to pick and to see. So, I mean, I think when we're talking about service, find out what your service level is, how you all are going to deliver it, but then the add-on value or the value adds are going to come in the different services that you're going to give to people. I think that's where it is.
So, do you think that there is something to letting your customers choose which services they want, or should you, as a business, be determining what services are in which? The only thing I can say is tier, Vivica. So don't get mad at me. I can't think of another word. All I can say is tier. Right? So,
No, no, no. It's cool because I get it. I mean, okay, like apartment wise, right? They're building
yeah.
like, there's apartments with no gyms in them. There's apartments with gyms. There's apartments with laundry rooms. There's apartments with, stackable washer and dryers within your apartment, right? So it's like amenities, if you want to
Mhm.
call it like different amenities. You could say it that way,
Yeah. Okay.
you know.
Okay. So is it okay to let your customers dictate which amenities there were, or is that something that you should do internally? Because there's obviously costs associated with amenities, right? There are
Mhm.
implementation issues and logistics issues with amenity
Mhm.
levels. So, what is the best way for a company to determine their amenity level? Is it, especially if you're small and you got a budget, right? How do you do that?
Well, I think it's you deciding what it is that you're going to offer. You decide. If you say you're going to be like Cheesecake Factory and have a 1,000-page menu, or I mean, you can take anybody cheesecake. I know you can find something on this menu, right? Or are you going to be like, you know, a restaurant, a boutique restaurant where we're only cooking what was fresh, what the chef could find today. So that's two
Mhm.
different
Okay.
customers. That's
So,
two completely different customers. But that still goes back to, you decide who is it that you're going to be. You as a business
right.
owner, as an entrepreneur, have to decide that. So like people's will get offered to work with, like if we're to work like with a corporation or something along those lines. And so, but our whole mission is about, making sure that people have access to high impactful quality training. And so if we're
Mhm.
training in the corporate place, then that's kind of taking us away from our mission, right? Because our mission
Right.
is to provide this phenomenal training to everybody. And it's often to those people who, one, haven't been exposed to it or don't have access to it. So we want to help facilitate that
Right.
and provide that. So I think you've got to, it goes back to that intentional, you've got to decide it. And then for that, your question about, are you telling them, hey, this is what you're going to have today versus I think you should have this, right? I don't think it has to be either or. I think it can be a
Okay.
mix. It depends on the situation. It depends on, and this is where we as entrepreneurs have to listen to your client. What is the problem, right? Don't just come in with like, yeah, we're gonna do this. I always ask people, tell me your three top hot buttons. Three hot buttons. And that gives me a really good sense
Ooh,
of,
that's good.
okay, I'm concerned about this. I'm concerned about this. And pricing or budget usually is one of those three, right? So it allows you
Right.
to open up the door and have that conversation. And then you can always go and say, I know that you guys were dead set on this half day training, but after, getting to know you, seeing how your team works together, I really think that this type of training would be much more beneficial based off the three hot buttons that you and I discussed earlier, because I want to make sure that you and your team are achieving the outcomes that you set out to achieve. So it's a little bit of consulting, but then also, I'm kind of
Mhm.
guiding and steering you towards this because I think you
Right.
should, to make yourself and that's one thing that helps to make you valuable, right? Bring solutions. Tell
Right.
me, educate your client, and I think that will allow for, a more in-depth relationship as you all are moving through too. And then I just think specifically with our industry, with the training educational industry, as much information as I can get is that helps so much.
Mhm.
And so I mean our clients, it initially starts off with that initial client, but we really our participants, our students are really our clients. So it's always about, okay, what is it that you need to be successful? So you are kind of doing a consulting, but also providing whatever that service is. So it can be both. I think it depends on the
Okay.
situation.
So this is really good, and we might have to do a part two on this, but I am aware of time, so I want to keep us on track.
Mhm.
And so, what is your takeaway for today?
I think the takeaway, I liked when you were saying the piece about, and I don't think we say it enough or hear it enough. So I think my takeaway, not I
Mhm.
think, I know my takeaway is when you said, you know what so don't undervalue it. Absolutely.
Right. Okay, so my takeaway for today is the tiers of service, right? And knowing what you're going to be. That is my takeaway. That's the biggest, like, my mind has just like exploded. I think we spend so much time, right, cultivating the perfect customer profile and what their revenue is like, what their makeup is like, that we neglect what we're gonna do, like who we're gonna be. It's like showing up for a date without your wallet, right? So I think it's really the best thing that I have heard in a long time, and that is my takeaway. Really figure out what kind of service you are going to provide your clients, and then you can determine who your
Mhm.
client is. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to us, and we will see you next time.